Hello, everyone. I hope everyone is happy and healthy and doing well wherever you are. So, I recently made a video around why 99% of MBA programs are useless and why you should avoid them. So, this video is around the rest 1% of MBA programs, which I mentioned that you should target. And I will be going over a very quick method of how you should choose your MBA program from within those 1% of MBA programs you should be targeting, right? So a little bit of my background. I have done an MBA. I have friends who have done MBAs from tier one Ivy League schools, Harvard, Wharton's, INSEAD's, IITs. I worked across three different continents. I have worked in multinational startups. I have hired a lot of people. I have interviewed as an MBA graduate. So I have a very good idea of what mistakes I have made in my career in choosing my MBA programs and what mistakes you can avoid. So, having said that, let's just go over this very quick framework of how you can choose your MBA program from within those 1% of MBA programs you should be targeting. So, the first thing you need to do is create a list of 10 companies you want to work for. And if you do not have that list, you need to create that list of 10 companies you want to work post MBA. And if you think you cannot come up with that list, then you probably shouldn't be doing an MBA. You should have an exact list of 10 odd companies you want to target post MBA. And then you need to see which schools these companies go to hire for your role or for your position. And if they do not go on campus, they still must have a historical trend that significantly states that these schools are their target schools, right? These are schools these companies give favor to, or they go on campus to hire, or in some way or the other, they have a link or relationship between these schools. If that relationship doesn't exist, it makes no sense for you to go to these MBA programs, no matter how good these are. So, for example, Wharton has a finance focused MBA, more or less. So, if you want to work in marketing, you might want to see if the company you want to work for post MBA, does it come to Wharton to hire for those roles, or does it go somewhere else? And in my case, for example, when I did my MBA and I applied to these consultancy firms, let's say McKinsey explicitly told me over 6 different times over 3 years that they do not hire from my school. It's not one of their target schools. So it doesn't matter whether you are Albert Einstein or Tesla or whoever. If your school is not within their target school list, these companies are not going to hire from those schools. It makes no sense for you to go to these schools. So, first of all, create a list of 10 companies you want to work for. And secondly, figure out which schools do these companies have a historical trend of hiring from, or they go on campus to hire from. So now once you have your abridged list of target schools, there are three variables that will determine where you should end up. So the number one variable is the careers office and the network. And the network basically implies the kind of connections you will make at the school, the alumni network, the quality of your colleagues in the MBA program, anybody who can make an introduction, that can help you get an interview, that can put in a good word for you. This basically goes under the network umbrella. And the bigger the school, the bigger the network is, right? So big schools have big networks, and a lot of times it's all about getting those interviews or references. Because believe it or not, in this world you live in, right, there are a lot of very smart people. And the reason why they end up in these high paying big jobs is because they're never afforded that opportunity to interview or that introduction. So when you go into these schools, you need to make sure that the network is big enough that you are afforded an interview, a connection, a reference, something within the network that you can leverage, right? And the careers office as well. The careers office basically attracts employers. If you go to a small school or a school that does not attract the right kind of employers, it will be very difficult for you to make a case for yourself, right? So, for example, if you go to a school where your target employer is coming on campus, it's a lot easier for you to make an impression, make a case. So the careers office and network is the first variable you absolutely need to consider. The bigger they are, the better they are, the easier it will be for you to get a job post MBA. So the second variable is the location of the school. Basically, the biggest factor that will determine your income and your post MBA career is your location, the school location, right? So if you have an Harvard MBA and, for example, if you're working in Nepal, you will earn a lot less money, let's say, than a web designer in San Francisco. And whether you get hired as an Harvard MBA in Nepal is another matter altogether. I have been in interviews where people had INSEAD MBAs, and the Toronto VPs did not know what an INSEAD MBA was. They were familiar with Rotman, which is a local school here, but not INSEAD. So the location of the school is critical. It determines your salary, it determines your opportunity, it determines your career growth. The bigger the city the school is in, the better it will be for you, the more opportunities it will present, right? So the location of the school is very, very important. There is nothing as a school with universal brand equity. There is no school out there, maybe Harvard, maybe Wharton's, but those are like 3 or 5 schools in the world that have kind of that brand equity that can get you hired across the world. But other than that, even within those top 1% of schools, no school has enough brand equity for you to leverage across continents, across states, right? So if you are in the Silicon Valley, a Stanford MBA might get preference over, let's say, a New York University MBA or even a Harvard MBA, because that's their geographical advantage, right? That's where they are located. They have alumni there, they have a careers office there. So the location of the school is critical. Do not just go after brand equities. Consider the location of the school as a second and very important variable. The third variable is your cohort, your classmates. How many are there? How big is the program? What kind of professional backgrounds do they have? So for example, if you want to be an entrepreneur in the medical industry, it might make sense for you to target a school that attracts a lot of physicians or cardiologists or somebody in the medical sector, right? So your cohort is a very big variable. The kind of participants, the kind of your classmates, the professions, all of that adds up, because over time, these connections that you make with your classmates, they're gonna reap dividends, right? And if you do not have a good quality cohort with you, you might just do a master's, right? Because there is nothing in the MBA program, the course material itself, that is worth doing an MBA for. It's all about connections and networking in the careers office, and the cohort is a very big part of it. So having mentioned that these 3 variables, depending on what kind of career you're looking afterward, the weightage of these variable depends. I would say it's either equally distributed, 33% each, the location, the cohort, as well as the careers office or the alumni network. Or if I were to choose one over the other 2, I would say location is the most critical component. And then comes your careers office and networking, and then lastly the cohort. But these 3, once you have created that list, you need to weight each of these variables and then figure out which one basically speaks the most to you. So once you have created that list of your top 10 companies you want to work for, shortlisted them based on these variables, apply to as many schools as you can afford to do so, 3 to 5 at least, and then go to a school which has the biggest brand. That's it. Like the school with the biggest brand equity, the one that's the most well recognized, go to that school. Simple as that. There are some mistakes a lot of aspiring MBA graduates make. One of them is they take into account the tuition fee. The tuition fee is technically irrelevant in this process, even though it might seem like the biggest dependent variable, but it's technically irrelevant. The reason for that is that if you go to a tier 1 school, let's say even by taking a $200,000 loan, you will be able to make that money back, because a tier 1 school or whatever school you are targeting is going to open jobs and opportunities for you the other school will not be able to do so. Let's say you have $0 and you have a choice between taking a $200,000 loan and going to a tier 1 school as compared to, let's say, a tier 2 school that's offering you scholarship and it's going to cost you nothing. Even then, my recommendation is to go to a tier 1 school, because again, the whole point of going to an MBA school is to advance your career. If you go to tier 2 school that's offering you scholarship and whatnot, it might not cost you in the short term, but it will waste your money, whatever money you spend, as well as time. and then it will not open any doors for you that a tier 1 school can open for you. So do not take into account tuition, always take into account the opportunity MBA program is going to open up for you. There are some jobs, there are some roles that only can be accessed through these top tier schools. So tuition is irrelevant. I would rather take on a loan and go to a tier 1 school rather than going to a tier 2 school without like on a scholarship, right? Because it's just a waste of time. The second mistake a lot of students make is they have a set time frame as to when they want to do an MBA. And in between that time frame, they go to the best school they can. That's not the right approach. If you have to wait 5 years, 6 years to get into a school, wait for that opportunity. So let's say if you apply to 4 tier 1 schools and 1 tier 2 school, right? And you get rejected by all tier 1 schools in year 1, do not take that tier 2 school opportunity and join them. Not in the first year, second year, third year. Wait as long as you need to get into your target schools. Do not work from a time stamp frame of mind, right? Work in terms of these are the schools I want to target, and I will wait 5, 6, 7 years till the time I improve my resume, my credentials, and whatnot, till the time I get into that school. So target schools, do not target time frames. And also take into account the placement numbers, right? Especially if you are an international student, you are crossing states or borders. A lot of these numbers that are quoted by these MBA programs, they are kind of inflated. So let's say if they say the starting salary is $100,000, that might not be the case for international students or somebody who is an immigrant, right? Similarly, it might differ from function to function. So another mistake these students make is that they kind of go with whatever is quoted. They kind of believe these numbers. So do your due diligence and do not just believe whatever is quoted to you. All right, guys, to summarize the process, first of all, create a target list of companies you want to work for. See which MBA programs these companies target for recruitment, and then weigh them across 3 variables: careers, office, and networking, your location, as well as the cohort dynamics. And then once you have an average list, go to the school, whichever has the highest brand equity. Simple as that. Do not take into account tuition, and do not take into account how long will it take you to get into that school. Target the school, not the time frame, right? And once you have done that, you would have a pretty good idea of the schools you want to go to and if it's going to add any value to your career. Having said that, guys, I hope you found this video helpful. If you have any questions, please let me know. Otherwise, thank you for watching and have a good one.